Claude Opus has just fallen to 3rd place in the AI rankings, which means Anthropic is in a huge amount of trouble because a new Chinese model, Kimi K3, has just come out and has blown the order up. We're going to be looking at Kimi K3, what I think about it, and what more broadly this means about the future of artificial intelligence. Chinese AI is not a future threat. It is here right now. It's extremely cheap, already good, and already being used at an enormous scale. I'm going to be talking about how much China are using it. And the West just hasn't been paying attention. And Xi Jinping has just gone up on stage and talked about China's commitments to open source artificial intelligence as well. So China is waking up and we need to start paying attention. Today, I'm going to be giving you a map of Chinese AI that's actually useful. I'm going to be doing a 101 because a lot of this is quite confusing. Who makes what the models are, why they're genuinely good and how they manage to do them for so cheap, and the difference between cloud, local, open source, open weights, etc. I'm going to be unpacking some of these terms because it does get very, very confusing. But we are going to be starting with Kimi K3 because that is the headline item right now. This is the model that just came out, which is, by all accounts, very good. So Kimi has changed the order of who has the best artificial intelligence. Very, very exciting. And a massive, massive threat to Anthropic. So Anthropic, the creators of Claude, which have the Fable model, which is the current top AI in the world. They also have Opus 4.8, which until about a month ago was the best model on Earth. Now they have a lot of competition, and this makes it very complicated for them because they keep having to extend access to Fable. Grok 4.5 is biting at the heels of Anthropic with a very good new model. So this is a problem for Anthropic, and I think as a result, they'll probably extend Fable on the subscription or release Opus 5 if it is good enough. It's a very, very busy week. There are various benchmarks that you will see doing the rounds right now. The big one, though, is the front-end code arena. So this is front-end, what the front end of your website or your app will look like. It is the user interface, the user experience. It has not just competed but beaten every single other model in this particular benchmark. Now, this is the one that's being used because it's the one where it is beating the state-of-the-art models. For the most part, it is not. It's comparable, it's very good, but it is not the best in the world. So this front-end code arena, if you do see it, take it with a pinch of salt because it is being cherry-picked as the one benchmark where it does absolutely trounce everything. Generally though, if I go over to artificial analysis, you need to take benchmarks with a pinch of salt as always. Generally, we can see Kimi K3 is landing here, 3rd position in intelligence, which means again, when Fable is removed from the subscription, so removed from general usage, unless you have a good amount of money, the order will be ChatGPT, Kimi, Grok 4.5, God, they're not even showing Opus 4.8 on here. So Anthropic's in trouble. Anthropic is in an awful lot of trouble because of this, which is exciting. We love competition. Now, I've been using Kimi K3 this morning to try it out. Is it as good as ChatGPT? No. Is it as good as Fable? No. But that doesn't really matter because it's so cheap on the API, and I'll talk about pricing in a moment. And it shows that the Chinese models can land in the top 3 a month or so after the state-of-the-art American models. It used to be they lagged by 6 to 9 months. Now they're catching up in about a month or 2. That is a problem for American closed source artificial intelligence. Now, Kimi is just one model amongst a whole range that are coming from China. And you've probably seen these names, but I wanted to quickly give a 101 just to show you who's making what and try to elucidate it a bit because it is very confusing. So Moonshot make Kimi, and Kimi K3 is their newest model that just came out. Kimi K 2.5 was very good, and it made some rumblings, but Kimi K3 today is having a bit of a DeepSeek moment. Speaking of DeepSeek, DeepSeek was it 2 years ago? That was the first big shock in the AI market where the West kind of realized like, oh my God, the Chinese are making really good models, because DeepSeek came along and it, for a short amount of time, it dethroned OpenAI, dethroned ChatGPT. We also have Z.ai or Z.ai, who have the GLM models. We had a recent one about a month ago, extremely good, a very good coding model. Then we have the Qwen models from Alibaba. They're the ones I personally use locally on my computer. I use little small Qwen models. We have MiniMax M3, and then we have Doubao from ByteDance, the creators of TikTok. These are probably the biggest models, and obviously there are variations. There are new ones all of the time. We're expecting to get the full version of DeepSeek v4 quite soon, which will further upset Anthropic's ambitions. But this is just a quick rundown of the market, because we tend to only talk about Anthropic and OpenAI, XAI, but there's a whole other ecosystem over in China who are doing some amazing things. And right now, Kimi is absolutely knocking it out of the park. The reason why people are paying attention, and the reason why this is a massive problem for the American closed source labs who rely on selling subscriptions, they rely on selling us APIs. The reason this is a problem for the whole American AI ecosystem is the price. So the Chinese models, they sell their API at a much, much, much lower price than the Americans, which means if you are burning a lot of tokens, so if you're using inside of a business, if you're coding, if you're creating, if you're spending a huge amount of tokens every single day, you can often do that for 20 times less if you're using a Chinese model. Now, are they as good as Fable 5? No. Are they as good as Sol 5.6? No, not necessarily. But if they are 80% as good and you're spending 10, 20 times less, so several thousand% less, you don't really care, because the decrease in price compared to one of the state-of-the-art American models is so great that you can spend more tokens, you can do more with it, and you can build in backstops in order to get a level of comparable quality. So just to pop over to, let's look at artificial arena, for example. Artificial analysis. This is cost per task, a weighted average cost, USD per intelligence index task. Lower is better. You can see on Fable it's $2.75. Very, very expensive. This is running on the API. Kimi K3 for the equivalent task costs under $1. So it's still relatively expensive, but it's cheaper by a large margin than Claude Fable. And as you can see over here, the intelligence is not that far off it. So you're very close to the state of the art, but you're paying much, 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 much less to get that equivalent. And then if you go down these cheaper models down here, Z.ai, this is GLM 5.2. This is MiniMax and DeepSeek here. They get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. So there are some very cost-effective Chinese models right now. That undercuts the whole mission of the American labs, who are closed source, so you must pay them to access the API, you must pay them subscriptions. They are currently going for IPOs, initial public offerings, at the end of the year, and they are doing that based on valuations of about $1 trillion, saying we are going to make this amount of money, we're going to pull back this amount of profit over this many years, hence the valuation. That whole enterprise is undercut by the Chinese offering equivalent levels of intelligence 1 or 2 months behind at this point for fractions of the cost. That destabilizes the whole American experiment with artificial intelligence, which could potentially destabilize the AI industry, which, considering it is a large part of where current investment is going, could destabilize the economy. This is China's plan, and I've talked about this previously, using open source models, using cheap models to destabilize the American AI industry and make it untenable. And they're playing a blinder. Xi Jinping actually got up on stage yesterday and committed China to open source artificial intelligence. I will cover that on another live because there's a lot to unpack there. But basically, the leader of the country has said, yep, we're going to be keeping this open source. We want AI for everybody. We want to make sure everybody has access to these wonderful technologies. This is not about national sovereignty. This is about humanity. Powerful, powerful words, and very interesting to see how this is going to pan out. One thing I do want to talk about, because it does get mixed up, and I have done other guides on this before. I see a lot of people throwing around that because Kimi K3 and these other models are open source and you can download them. Just because something is open source or open weights and you can download it onto your computer does not mean you'd actually have the computing capacity to power that model. So realistically, you're having to buy a server, or you're having to buy lots of GPUs, or a big rig that you have at home, which might cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. So yes, a lot of the Chinese labs are very committed to open source and open weights, basically giving out the weights, giving out what is inside of their model so that you can deploy it locally on your machine. For the most part, that is not plausible on your home computer. Where it is a threat is enterprises, businesses can run these local models inside of their enterprise. They can fine tune it, and then they can run it basically free, paying for the cost of the electricity. That destabilizes, again, OpenAI and Anthropic, because if you're a large enough company to be able to run this local model, train it to your own particular needs, why would you pay Anthropic or ChatGPT, OpenAI, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars per month for tokens? That is the big threat here. So it is not free for the majority of us, because we don't have several hundred thousand, well, maybe you do, £700,000 worth of server equipment sitting in our office. So it is important just to get a lay of the land in terms of what a cloud service is. So when we use ChatGPT, when we use Anthropic, it is in the cloud. It's not sitting on our computer. We are sending messages back and forward, back and forward, back and forward. So the Chinese models also have cloud. So if you come to Kimi.com, these memberships here are running on their servers. That is very different to it running locally on your computer, and there are privacy implications of that, because every time you send messages back and forward, yes, these companies say, oh, we don't train on your information, especially if you're on this plan, you're giving us this amount of money, we won't train on your information. You have to trust that that is true. That is the same for OpenAI and Anthropic. This is not just the Chinese labs, but if you are putting information in, you need to trust that they're actually doing what they say. So if you are using cloud, information is always passing back and forward. If you're using local, it's sitting on your computer, it is going to be totally cut off and no information goes back and forward. That's really important if you are running an enterprise or a business, because you can get a Chinese model and you can install it on your local computers, you can fine tune it, and then it is totally secure. It is more secure, even though it's Chinese, it is more secure than an American model, because the Americans do not offer local for the most part. It is up to you what you need. And the other thing I wanted to mention is there's a lot of data, and I'll put it in the newsletter because I think it's important. In the West, Europe in particular, and America, we tend to be very hesitant around artificial intelligence. We have the highest levels of fear, we have the highest levels of reticence, and we have the lowest levels of excitement about the future of AI. That is not the case in Asia. Certainly not the case in Asia. So I've got some figures here from Stanford. In China, in particular, 600 million users of artificial intelligence. So that is about 50% of the country. The adoption is going up by 142% year on year. So it is accelerating. I was in China, in Beijing, I think it was last year. And I remember when I was flying over, I started chatting to my neighbor on the plane. She was from Hangzhou. Hangzhou is where DeepSeek is from. And she was proud about that. It was something that she was excited to tell me about. Whereas in the West, we tend to be very reticent and less excited about artificial intelligence and worry more about all of the negatives. That is not something I picked up as much in China. So I was chatting to her in my bad Chinese about it, and she was excited. And when I landed in Beijing, I could see everybody was already using AI. I talked to people about AI an awful lot. Going into places like the local bookshop, how to use DeepSeek, how to use these models was the kind of all the rage at the front of the shop, at the counter. It is something that is very much being pushed, and there's a lot more openness and excitement in China and in Asia as a whole than we see in the West, which if you don't go there often, you might not realize, but it's far, far more positive and open towards artificial intelligence than you might encounter in the UK, Europe, or America, where there is a lot more reticence. So, practical point of view, what do we do with this? How can we actually use these models? I would recommend grabbing a Kimi subscription and playing around with it. There is a free version, but it's like with all these things, relatively limited. And having a go with it, because it is very, very good. As I said, it's not as good as ChatGPT 5.6 Soul, but it's interesting to use as a different model just to see that there are alternatives out there. I am personally going to be rigging it up to do my front end on my website and giving it, because it came number top number one in the front-end code arena, so I'm going to give it a shot with that. And also investigate local models, open source models. Now, you're not going to be able to run DeepSeek version 4 preview. You're not going to be able to run the state-of-the-art Kimi or GLM model on your home computer, but you can run smaller models. I have done various guides on local LLMs, and I think it's important that people learn how to do them. I want you to be able to use artificial intelligence to make your life better, not just spend all of your time learning about it, because good God, there's a lot to learn. So come to aiwithkyle.com, subscribe to AI with Kyle on YouTube as well, and follow for more advice on usable artificial intelligence.